Today I wanted to have a discussion about galleries and about how they can actually engage more effectively with collectors to generate better and more sales over time. Now, of course, I will caveat this by saying that I'm coming at this from the point of view of a collector. I don't have a gallery to manage and staff and artists to keep continually happy and constant fires to put out in an uncertain market. So it may be that some galleries don't feel that they have the luxury to think more long-term and strategically on their strategies with collectors when they're faced with the here and now. And of course, many galleries do already engage really effectively with a loyal and growing collector base. But for those who are maybe finding this climate uncertain, and there have been sadly a number of big closures recently, the latest to be announced is Stephen Friedman, who had some fantastic artists on his roster. For these artists, here are a few thoughts from a collector on what works for me and what doesn't. And I'd be really interested to know your thoughts, whether you are a gallerist or an artist or a collector yourself. Do pop your thoughts in the comments below. So my number one tip is to nurture genuine long-term relationships with collectors. Over the years, I've gotten to know a number of galleries, and as you do this, they will add you to their various communications channels. The most basic of this being their newsletter. But then as you buy works, or look as if you're going to buy works, they will upgrade you to perhaps their drinks, their openings, and often this steps up to a more intimate in-person wooing, shall we say, with intimate collector dinners. I've also become friends with gallerists and will sometimes even go for lunches and catch-ups with them. However, some gallerists do seem to set a sort of unspoken time limit on when they expect to achieve a sale from you before moving on to focus on other collectors. Now, of course, I get their thinking. A gallerist's job is to generate sales for their artists, so it may seem more efficient to focus their attentions and budgets elsewhere if they're not seeing immediate traction. However, it is important to recognize that a lot of good collectors take a considered approach to their collecting and may take some time to make an acquisition. And also, collectors can add value over and above just buying works. Word of mouth is extremely important and they can draw in their network. And also, well-networked collectors bring other opportunities. Just for example, I was recently thrilled to be invited to be a nominator for a large art prize, and the prize bestows a monetary award on the winning artist, as well as gives money to charities. So of course, when thinking of which artists to nominate, immediately I think about those galleries who nurture a really impressive roster of artists. You naturally think of galleries that have taken the time to really introduce themselves to you and their artists to you and sort of really help you get to know what they're about. Now, of course, some people could never ever buy from a gallery that has spent lots of money on let's say fancy dinners over a number of years. But I honestly think most people would be fairly embarrassed to continually accept such invitations with no expectation of displaying any kind of reciprocity down the line. And B, most collectors are too busy to actually continually accept these invitations if they don't align with their interests or their personal hopes and likes in terms of their collections. I personally think it's much better to keep interacting with collectors in whichever precedent you've already set with them, and to let them decline invitations if it's not working out for them, rather than, say, remove them from certain lists after a couple of months. If margins are really tight, perhaps take longer in the first place to add collectors to your most costly lists, let's say the dinners. And keep people at the drinks and private view stage for longer, because if you are too nice too soon and then suddenly disappear, it will look sort of rather cynical and transactional and could put some collectors off buying from you when they are finally in a position to buy later, or as they have more free money to spend. My personal view is that once someone is a friend at the gallery, you should make them a friend for life and just keep growing your friendship circle. It will come back to you. Number 2 is don't make lazy assumptions. I've lost count of the number of times a gallery has assumed that I'll love an artist simply because that artist looks like me. Sometimes I've made inquiries about a completely different artist, and the gallerist has come back sort of quite urgently insisting I look at the works of a particular Black female artist instead. Now, while I am loving the increased representation of artists from diverse or previously underrepresented backgrounds, it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that speaks to me. Most collectors are more nuanced than that, and the very best galleries will take the time to actually chat to the person and understand from them what it is they're looking for. And also take the time to show them everything the gallery is interested in, not just what you assume that they'll like, the collector will like. In a similar vein, my mother-in-law, who doesn't buy a huge amount of art, recently decided to make a big purchase. And what with her being from Yorkshire, if the gallerist had decided just to show her Hockney prints or works from Yorkshire artists, that gallerist would have missed out on a significant sale. In the end, my mother-in-law came away with an astonishing and intricate work by a Chinese artist. And her love of arts from that region came from her stint as an expat in Asia when she was a bit younger. So it is just always worth putting assumptions aside and really trying to engage with and understand collectors in a genuine level and with a more open-minded approach. So it's really important not to assume you know someone's likes, dislikes, politics, or aesthetic preferences, as that can really diminish the gallery in the eyes of a collector, and you can lose out on some great opportunities. And my third and final tip is, why not think about collaborating more with your trusted collectors? I've co-hosted a couple of exhibitions with galleries in the past in different venues, and I've also attended a number of collection tours in people's houses that have been organised by or with a gallery. So this does happen, but not as much as it could or should happen in my view. And collectors are often delighted to show their prized possessions and are often happy to cover any costs that are incurred during the event at their home. So it represents a monetary saving for the gallery, but it also helps other collectors understand an artist in a domestic setting, and perhaps makes the work even more alluring or workable when seen in somebody's home. And most importantly, gives galleries access to a very targeted and curated list of like-minded peers, the collectors' like-minded peers and other potential customers for the gallery. So I do hope you've enjoyed my tips for how galleries can get a lot more out of their connections, and do consider subscribing for free if you enjoy this content. There's lots more arts content to come. Thank you so much for watching.